Hey everyone, Exit 8 is a new film by Genki Kawamura, produced in part by Toho, which is a studio I have grown to respect over the years. This is one of those films that looks deceptively simple on the surface because it boils down to a guy trying to navigate his way out of an ever-changing subway system, avoiding anomalies that reset his progress back to level zero. That simplicity makes it easy to underestimate this movie, but it's also what allows the environment itself to become a character within the story, which kind of blends the visual storytelling with deeper narrative ideas about family and fatherhood inside what is essentially a puzzle structure based on a game. While the film is in Japanese with subtitles, most of the story really is conveyed visually, with the subtitles adding context rather than really carrying the full weight of the narrative. Because of that, it's surprisingly easy to follow, even if you miss a line or two of dialogue. One of the things that I enjoy most about Japanese cinema is its visual storytelling, which often carries much, if not more, meaning than a lot of the dialogue that we are getting. What I appreciate, really appreciate about Exit 8 is that it respects you as a viewer to keep up. And because it leans fully into that approach, it pulls you into the experience rather than just showing you what's happening on screen. So let's get into why this film works and what some of the bumps are that you should know about. While you're here, please do give this review a thumbs up and help more people to discover Exit 8 to decide if this is a movie for them. This is a film that really isn't going to stay in theaters very long, I don't think, simply because, subtitled films in the United States rarely do. That's unfortunate because this is exactly the kind of movie that benefits from being seen in the theater, where you can sit with it and you can just absorb it and you can really pay attention to what is unfolding on screen without distractions. It also sits in this interesting space genre wise. You could call it suspense or even horror, but it also works as a psychological family drama. It doesn't lock itself into any one category. And that flexibility is part of what makes it so effective. So rather than being confined to a single genre, it kind of borrows from several to create a more complete experience. As a result, it feels closer in tone to films that you might get from A24 while still carrying that really thoughtful, human centered storytelling that Toho has just mastered over the years. The film opens in a subway car with the main character, who's just known as the Lost Man, standing with everyone else. He's completely absorbed by his phone, he's disconnected from the world around him. Then we hear this high pitched wail of a baby crying, and its mother is just trying to comfort it while there's this other stranger, this man, who's just yelling at her, trying to make her stop the baby from crying. Everyone else simply just looks away without engaging, including the lost man, our main character. That moment quietly defines this film. As we move through the story, it becomes clear that it represents the lost man's disconnection from others, becoming kind of a metaphor for how easily we isolate ourselves within our own experiences, avoiding both interaction and responsibility. It builds on that idea of isolation, showing how a train full of people can still feel so lonely. When the lost man exits the train and begins walking through the subway halls, his emotional isolation becomes literal. His attempt to leave and face what is clearly going to be a difficult conversation about his future turns into something else entirely as his physical space becomes a maze that resets every time he misses an anomaly. What was once a metaphor is now something tangible that he's actively having to live through. He's a moving forward, but not progressing necessarily. He's repeating that same path without getting anywhere until he realizes he is not actually alone. That shift creates a connection that is both unsettling and strangely comforting. as we begin to kind of understand who else is in that space with him and how their experiences either align or differ from his own in this film. It's a simple setup, but it allows the lost man to discover this inner purpose within himself that really pushes him to connect with someone else and to take on responsibility in a meaningful way that he had purposely avoided in the past. That's when the emotional wall he's maintained between himself and everyone else around him begins to break down, and his perspective starts to shift. What I really appreciated is that this transformation doesn't fix everything. The film doesn't reward growth with this easy resolution. Instead, it gives him the tools to better navigate that system that he is trapped in, which makes the journey feel that much more honest. Whether he escapes, it becomes so much less important than how he changes along that path, especially as we begin to see that this isn't just his story, but it's also the story of others who are moving through that space along with him. What makes this film work is how it takes that simple structure and turns it into something deeply unsettling. The anomalies can be anything: a small change in a sign, a sound that feels slightly off, a subtle shift in behavior, or a flash flood. It could be anything. And if you miss even one thing, it resets everything back to zero. That creates a constant tension between what he's experiencing, what you're experiencing, and kind of what we're hoping for. Because it's so easy to overlook something. And yet he has no choice but to keep trying, because what's the alternative? The horror isn't in what's directly shown, but in what you almost noticed or what you realized too late, along with the frustration of losing all that progress in an instant. There's also an underlying metaphor at work where the subway becomes a moment in time that the lost man is really trapped within. It's in that liminal space. He's forced to confront decisions that he has been avoiding all his life, along with the distance he has created between himself and the people in his life as he moves between who he is now and who he is becoming. As you start to put these pieces together, that's when you notice that none of the characters have names. They're the lost man, the walking man, the boy, the lost man's partner. They're defined by their roles rather than individual identities, which make it so much easier to imagine yourself as any one of these people in any one of their positions. That's what turns Exit 8 into this every person story. You're not just watching one person struggle with responsibility. You're watching a version of that struggle that could belong to anyone. It could belong to you. And that choice deepens the emotional impact because the distance between viewer and character, it just disappears. This isn't a film that lives or dies on traditional metrics like pacing or plot twists. The pacing's strong, with enough space between moments to maintain tension through subtle changes and small reveals that kind of build that moment. The film also relies on oversimplifying its themes, layering them gradually, and kind of leaving the interpretation up to you as the viewer. That's a strength, but it can also be a challenge. The subtlety may feel unclear for some viewers, and the repetition of the environment can make it harder to stay engaged, especially when missing small details that kind of affect your understanding of the story. And that challenge, it really is complicated by the need to read the subtitles while tracking visual cues. If someone prefers a fast paced action movie or a more direct form of storytelling than what we're getting here, which is a bit more observational than what you might get like in an action or, a different kind of film, this approach could end up feeling a bit frustrating. Because of that, it's important to really understand what kind of experience this film offers before going into the theater. So, is Exit 8 ticket worthy? If you enjoy suspense, if you are open to a bit of horror, if you like films that give you space to interpret and to think about what you're seeing, then yeah, I think you'll absolutely enjoy Exit 8. This is a film that makes you think while you're watching it and it stays with you afterwards. It is also an experience that asks something of you. You have to pay attention and engage with it. If you do, there's a lot here to take in, especially around the themes of responsibility and awareness and the choices that we make when we are forced to grow up. It probably isn't the best fit for children since the subtlety of those complex ideas in this film, paired with the story structure and the need to read the subtitles, could definitely be confusing for younger viewers. This feels much more geared toward adults or older teens who can follow along with the story and the subtitles, as well as kind of understand what those other themes are that we're seeing on screen. So, have you seen Exit 8? And are you maybe planning to see it? Are you undecided? I'm getting more and more into Japanese cinema. I just kind of love it. So I would actually like to know what films you recommend in Japanese cinema. Maybe some of the newer ones. I've watched a lot of the older ones, but then I got away from Japanese cinema for a while. But now I'm kind of back and I'm trying to catch up on films from maybe the last 10 years or so. So if there's anything that you've seen that you really love, let me know and I'll see if I can find it. I would love to check out a few more kind of gems in the Japanese cinema world. All right, so thanks for being here, you guys. Please do give this review a thumbs up and subscribe if this helped. And while you were here, why not check out one of these other reviews? And I'll see y'all again soon. Until then, bye for now.